Once you understand the scientifically established guidelines of exercise program design, it's essential to treat yourself as an N=1 experiment. People respond differently to training, and prescription therefore must be tailored to your own individual response to optimize results. Is there a true repetition range for muscle growth? This video, whilst about a specific topic, is as much as anything a catalyst for how you can approach essentially all fitness concepts. So the debate about how many repetitions are optimal for muscle growth will forever rage on in the fitness industry. And I've explained before on this channel how essentially you can achieve muscle growth by using multiple rep ranges. As long as the scientific principles of muscle hypertrophy are present, for example, dynamic contractions, progressive overload, consistency, all that jazz. But when we look at fitness discourse, the hypertrophy rep range, if you like the optimal, people like to use that word, is most commonly seen as around 8 to 12 reps, or what can be classified as a moderate rep range. And this range has the benefit of allowing a repeated stress on the muscle, and in addition allowing for good overload, as of course there is a dose-response relationship between resistance training and muscle growth. But we can get more technical, and as a note, this paper classifies a moderate range as 6 to 12 reps. The anabolic superiority of moderate repetitions has been attributed to factors associated with metabolic stress. Although low repetition sets are carried out almost exclusively by the phosphocreatine system, moderate repetition schemes rely heavily on anaerobic glycolysis. This results in a significant buildup of metabolites. And so absolutely a moderate rep range can be very good for muscle growth. However, you can use multiple rep ranges, and people can build muscle using lower rep ranges, for example. And so I want to share an article by Greg Nuckols to this community, and this article is a few years old, but nonetheless an excellent read. But let's start with these thought-provoking quotes by Dr. Brad Schoenfeld. Whether low reps or moderate reps evoke a greater hypertrophic response has been a matter of debate, and both produce significant gains in muscle growth. However, there is a prevailing belief that a moderate range of approximately 6 to 12 reps optimizes the hypertrophic response. Current research suggests that maximum gains in muscle hypertrophy are achieved by training regimens that produce significant metabolic stress while maintaining a moderate degree of muscle tension. A hypertrophy-oriented program should employ a repetition range of 6 to 12 reps per set, with rest intervals of 60 to 90 seconds between sets. Exercises should be varied in a multiplanar, multi-angled fashion to ensure maximal stimulation of all muscle fibers. And so, by the way, I reference Dr. Brad a lot. It doesn't mean that every word he says is golden. I just think that he gives good information presented in a good way that can further our development and understanding of hypertrophy. And so Greg's article is long and in-depth. So what I want to do is structure this discussion around the key points. When looking at the whole body of scientific literature, there's simply not a very big difference in muscle growth when comparing different rep ranges. And so we have meta-analysis such as this one from 2017. Meta-analysis being the highest level of evidence on the evidence-based pyramid. Who knows how they built the evidence-based pyramid? Probably ramps or something. And as Greg states, in the context of this article, the vast majority of the studies in this meta compared what I'd consider low versus moderate loads. This is the absolute strongest evidence we have that hypertrophy is the same between moderate load training, i.e. the hypertrophy zone, and low load training. And we have further research, for example, Morton et al. 2016, which involved young men with at least 2 years of lifting experience, and they performed 4 full body training sessions per week for 12 weeks. One group did 3 sets of 8 to 12 reps for all exercises, and one group did 3 sets of 20 to 25 reps for all exercises, and all those sets were taken to failure. 12 weeks of supervised higher and lower load per repetition resistance training programs were similarly effective at inducing skeletal muscle hypertrophy in resistance trained participants when resistance training was performed to volitional failure. Of course, when you look at any research, you have to comb through it and you have to understand the limitations to it. And then we have other research such as Fink et al., for example, where we didn't see significant changes in muscle thickness between different repetition protocols. Now, of course, the participants here were untrained. The training protocol involved 3 sets of unilateral preacher curls to failure, 3 times per week. Not exactly how most of us train, but certainly controlling for a ton of variables to allow for a valid comparison. And so remember, just because something is published in an academic paper, it doesn't mean that it's complete gold dust. Of course, there can be problems with the design of the research. But my point with that very quick communication of some of the evidence is there is a fair amount of evidence into repetition ranges with resistance training and muscle growth. And we can certainly conclude at this point, looking at the basis of evidence, that there is not a significant difference between lower and moderate rep ranges for muscle hypertrophy. That does not mean that moderate ranges are not very good when people talk about the hypertrophy zone, just that we need to be open-minded and not so tribal and understand that people can use different rep ranges for muscle growth. From a practical standpoint, you should probably do most of your training in the rep range that allows you to get in the most hard sets per training session and per week for each exercise you use and each muscle you train. This generally coincides with a moderate intensity and rep range for most exercises and most people. And so here is the what suits you aspect, the common sense. And choose a rep range or ranges that you can use consistently with hard work. And that is the simplification of a vast evidence base by Greg, and I love that. And in particular, that phrase that allows you to get in the most hard sets per training session. And so that is the variable nature of evidence-based communication, not that this is the best rep range. And number 3, since different rep ranges go about triggering a growth response in slightly different ways, you're probably better off training with a full spectrum of rep ranges instead of rigidly staying in a single rep range and intensity zone. And so I've talked about these types of ideas at length on my channel before, where we have, for example, change equals adaptation, for example. If you change a stimulus, that can lead to further adaptations. And just the idea of varying things over time, because it may be exciting for you to use a different protocol that can help with your adherence to training. The idea that you may use multiple different rep ranges over your active life and over your muscle growth training. That's absolutely valid. And so Greg does give some specific advice of what he suggests. Speaking purely anecdotally, here are my 100% bro certified, entirely not evidence-based observations about the rep ranges that tend to work best for several key lifts. He's being a bit humble because it's an excellent evidence-based article. Dumbbell pressing of all sorts, sets of 8 to 15 in general. With weights that are too heavy, balance can become problematic. So you waste a lot of energy just controlling the weight instead of training the muscles you're trying to train. And so what are your thoughts of his application there? You may agree or disagree with him, but what I would say is that variables such as balance, of course, those are other key considerations when you're thinking about your rep ranges. And like any good fitness article, here's a pie where Greg gives a structure of how you may portion this out. Again, that is not set in stone. Most people are going to take information and adapt it. But like any good Saturday night, and I don't know because I haven't been out on a Saturday night for like a decade or something, but like any good Saturday night, let's end with a takeaway. The hypertrophy rep range isn't meaningfully better for hypertrophy than higher or lower rep training physiologically. When adjusting for factors like the number of sets performed and the rest periods between sets, it may be slightly better on average, but there's a lot of variability. From a more practical perspective, the hypertrophy rep range is in general the intensity range that allows people to maximize how much hard work they can manage per workout and per week. However, looking at things from the reverse perspective, asking yourself how to maximize high quality sets per week, there is quite a bit of variability in optimal loading zone and rep range person to person and lift to lift. That pesky variability that very much underlies what I do on my channel. There are probably benefits of utilizing rep ranges across the entire spectrum, so don't neglect lower rep work and higher rep work in your training. And so I hope that was helpful for people and short and digestible for you to take away. And at the core of my channel is this approach to fitness concepts. It very much depends on you. It's variable in nature. Adjust to your needs. This binary tribal approach that some people have, it's just not really the way that I believe that fitness should be communicated. Thank you so much for watching. I'm James Malinka. This is Shredded Sports Science. I'll see you soon.